Hi guys, and welcome to the final lesson on the course. We're going to apply some final touches and begin the process of rendering the image. So in the previous lesson, we saw that the reflection here, the shadow caused by the bottle, was shown on the can. To do this, we need a V-Ray tag. So what we need to do is add a tag to the can. So the one we're going to add is called V-Ray compositing. And all you need to do is uncheck this box to not show any reflections. So now this shadow from the bottle shouldn't show up. We could do the same for the bottle by just copying and pasting. This way, when we render, each object appears independently. We have just the bottle or just the can. There are no reflections or shadows. This way they won't interfere with the editing process when we take it to Photoshop later. We could animate the objects here, but then the process would take much longer, and the rendering would also take quite a bit longer. But this all depends on the performance of your own computer. But that's why we're going to animate it on a separate course in After Effects. So I'm going to render a large image. 4000 by 4000 is fine, and the distance I think is okay. So I'm going to render a large image. 4000 by 4000 is fine, and this distance I think is okay. Then later, if you wanted to, you could do a post-production in Photoshop and an animation in After Effects. And this way we could reduce the rendering process considerably. It's an effective solution if you're presenting this kind of brand or product you want to do an animation. Okay, let's center this like this. We could add another tag, protection, and this way the image remains stable and we can't move it. We can also add a camera. Now you can play around with the camera. If you go here, then you can select the interactive render to see how it's coming along before actually rendering. So you would just need to wait for the image to load. So as you can see, it's quite small, but it just gives us an idea of how it's looking. As we added the tag, the can doesn't receive reflection or shadow from the bottle, and vice versa, which is exactly what we want. Later on, we'll have to adjust the shadows the bottle and the can make here at the bottom. Now the next thing I'm going to do is separate the bottle and the can so that they are two separate objects. So here for my bottle, if you click on the V-Ray tag, you need to change the object ID to 1. And then do the same for the can, but change the object ID to 2. And now the bottle and the can are separated. They're two separate objects. We could also create an effect for the background. So it's this one here. I could add a kind of gradient between one point and another. So let's add a gradient, like this. Make it circular, like this. We could change the colors. This one here, and here we could choose this one. We could make this one more intense. Something like this. A bit more. Much better. And there we go. Now we could carry on making some more adjustments here. Just play around with the options. Let's take a look at this to see how it's going. It's taking a long time now. So we could use the pre-render so it doesn't take as long. There we go. You can see the gradient effect on the background. Now let's play around with the camera. So here we have the camera options and we're going to create an effect. The effect we're going to create is a kind of vignetting, which is here. So we can adjust this. Then we could try a preview render. So let's adjust the settings here. We could put a width of 600. Uncheck save. Let's take a look to get an approximate idea of what the final render will look like. So the vignetting effect is way too much. We can go back to the options and lower it, maybe to 2. Let's take another look. That's much better. Let's try making it 3 to add just a bit more. No, that's not right. So I'll put it down to 2. That's enough. Now what you can also do is separate every element of the 2 objects. So we've got the bottle, the lid of the bottle, the can, the labels, all of those. So each one of those needs a V-Ray tag like I've added here. And then in this panel you need to assign each one an object ID and make sure they're not repeated. So separate everything you can, and this really makes the editing process easier if you take it to Photoshop later. And for the next step, go to Plugins, Examples, V-Ray Bridge, and V-Ray Multipass Manager. Here it is. And here you have all the different channels. Let's put all these up like this. Now the one we're interested in is this one here, Object ID Channels. Let's just delete all these first. So I have 7 or 8 separate objects. But I think actually 6 objects is fine. So click on Render Elements and then go to Multi and Channels and then select Object Select. And here, put the object ID, so 1. And we have to repeat that for every object. Once all the objects are selected, you could select Add All Channels, and you could experiment. So you've got bump, normals, point position, etc. These channels are all related to animation, but we're not going to touch the animation on this course, as we said earlier, because this makes the rendering process much longer, especially with an image of this quality. So the way we're doing it makes those times a lot shorter. The next step is to render our image. So we'll go here and choose the settings for our final render. In output, we'll set the size, so we can put 1920 by 1080. We don't need to adjust anything here to do with the frames. If we wanted to print the image, then we'd need to change the resolution to 300 pixels per inch, but as this is digital, we can leave it at 72. We need to activate multipass, and then down here at the bottom, click on this icon and select Post Effects. This is the best way to render. The multipass splits the image into different passes so we can make better adjustments in post-production. And in Save, you need to select where to save each one of the elements. So I could name it Project 1. Then I'll copy this and paste it onto the multipass image panel down here. You can use a JPEG format, PSD, PNG, whichever you want. You can also adjust the depth. Okay, in PNG we have 16 bits, but for example in OpenEXR we have 32. Now I'll go with PNG, copy it here too, and now we can render the image. We just need to go here to render and wait until the image has loaded. And when that's loaded, we'll have the final image of the bottle and the can for the advert of our product.